Hello everyone, my name is Somaya Ben Allouch and I'm a professor at the University of Applied Sciences in Amsterdam and at the University of Amsterdam, where I'm an endowed professor, and my research field is about human-system interaction for health and well-being. So I've been asked to tell something about professional networks, and to be honest, that's not something I really actually been engaged in very consciously for a long time. When I started my PhD and in the beginning of my research years, that was not like a big thing or a focus for me. But when I started to reflect upon it a time ago, then actually I found that there were some consistencies in the steps which I have been doing, and maybe that could be of relevance to somebody. So I will just share some of those things with you, and it might help. Actually, when I reflected upon what I have been doing in terms of professional networks, etc., I never really went to like networks in the sense that I went there to network. What really worked for me is that the content of conferences or meeting was always the main goal, which attracted me to some places, and that's how I actually met people. So let me just tell a couple of things which, by hindsight, I think helped me in getting to know some people which, you know, I'm collaborating with, or which brought me to visiting places for doing postdoc research. So just let me start with a couple of things I think I can share with you, or that might be helpful. So one of the main things actually I think which is very nice to do is if you find a conference which, looking at the content of your work, could be really interesting. For example, for me, that was around 2003, 2004, when I started my PhD. I went to the Ubiquitous Computing Conference, and actually that's still one of my favorite conferences to go to. In that conference, there's this whole mix of interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary people, researchers working on ubiquitous computing, ambient intelligence, pervasive computing, nomadic computing, all kinds of names you can give it. And actually, that was one of the main conferences where I still go to, and also where I got to know a lot of interesting people who were working on very interesting topics. So for me, that really helped me to kind of find a community, find a place where I could look around and see what other people were doing around the world, besides what they were doing in the Netherlands, what was been done in the Netherlands actually. And I wrote a proposal to get into the doctoral consortium. Thankfully, that worked out well. It was accepted, so I went to do my presentation there, and I got very relevant feedback about like the first steps of my PhD project. And then it helped me to get to know the people there, but also to sharpen my thoughts about the research lines, etc., which I would like to pursue in the PhD project. So for me, going to conferences, and later on also the CHI conferences and pervasive health conferences, those kinds of conferences, mobile CHI, you know, the conferences where you could do a lot of human-computer interaction and focused on particular applications domain, that really helped me to get to know the field and get to know like journals and where people were publishing. So it really widened up my focus on what kind of interesting things I could do. So that actually helped for me. Another important thing for me was also, for example, my place. I went to do after my PhD, I went to Stanford to do a postdoc, and that I got that postdoc actually by working together with a professor which was working at Stanford, and I went to one of his talks. That was when I went to that talk, he was in the Netherlands. There was a symposium, so I went to the talk because the topic really interested me. And after that talk, there was like this small meetup and where you could ask questions and stuff. And so at a certain moment we were chatting, and we had like related interests, etc. And a couple of years later, we kept a little bit in contact, not very, we did not email every day, but like I think once a year or something, or we saw each other at conferences. And then at a certain moment when I was finishing my PhD and I got the opportunity to go abroad, I emailed him and asked, well, I would really like to go to Stanford, because he really had this great ambient intelligence research lab at Stanford, which we did not have at the university when I was doing my PhD project. So I asked him and he said, well, that we can have a look at your research and we can see if that aligns with the topics we are working on. And thankfully that worked out very well. I went twice, actually 2 years after each other, with a time spot being back in the Netherlands. And that also, I think, really helped me in getting more focus in what I liked, and also getting to know a more international area and another way of working. And also we were sitting in a lab with a lot of different backgrounds and expertises, and at that lab they also really worked a lot with industry, because I mean it was at Stanford, so Menlo Park and all the big companies were there. So the PhD students had a lot of interesting projects there, which were related to the big companies, big tech companies. We went to Google, we went to Facebook. So it really was very interesting to see how that research community was working. And I really, I think for me, that was really a big breakthrough, in the sense that I got the sense of, okay, this is what I want to do and this is how I like to do it. And the international community was very inspiring. So that could also be something, find a spot. If you, for example, during my PhD, I went a lot abroad, but for doing like my data analysis too, I went to a lot of big tech companies, Nokia, I went in the Netherlands to Philips, I went to Intel in the US, but that was for a shorter time to collect data and then went back to the Netherlands. But having been abroad for a research period, also enlarges your view of how research is being done in other places, what they think is important. So you can also see what the differences are in how you are used to work, or what kind of journal articles are popping up, or which kind of journals are interesting for your field. So for me, that was also a great learning experience. What else is very important in professional networking? At the end, I think the most important thing is just to feel very comfortable around your research topic. And if you like your research topic, you will find the venues where your peers will be, and then you will always have something to talk about, because if you talk about the content, then it's much easier to open up the discussion and having a talk, and then you can find each other much quicker than just networking for networking. That's not really my style, and I'm actually I don't think that will change. And yeah, that's something which I don't feel very comfortable with. So for me, it really works to talk about the topic, and then when it clicks personally, it also really helps to come up with collaborations and try to come up with, finding journal issues where you can work on, or you become a special editor. So then these things more or less happen naturally, because you find each other content-wise. Well, hopefully these advices help you out, and let me know if you want to know anything else. Thanks a lot.